Morning, boys and girls. Hope you're doing amazing. Boys, girls, how you doing?
We're doing amazing! We're doing amazing! We're doing amazing!
Okay, I can't hear you from here. You gotta shout louder. Louder!
We're doing amazing!
No, you can do louder than that. 1, 2, 3.
We're doing amazing!
That was fantastic. Let's open in prayer. Lord, we just thank you for bringing us through this week at school and at play. Thank you for being with our families. As we listen to today's story and messages, we pray that you will just remind us that you always want what's best for us. And we just pray that what we learn today will bring us closer to you. Amen.
Feel it in the air right now. It's all around, I see it everywhere. It's the power, yeah, God's power. It's the power to move any star. It's the power to heal your broken heart. It's the power, yeah, God's power. So don't hold back, no, don't hold still. God is here and He is real. Take 4 steps to the left, to the left. 1, 2, 3, 4. Turn it around and move to the right. 1, 2, 3. Now take tiny little jumps forward to the front. 1, the only one that I could live for. You're the only one, you're the only one, you're the only one that I could live for. You were always, always there, every how and everywhere. Your grace abounds so deeply within me. You will never ever change. Yesterday, today, the same. Forever till forever meets no end. One way, Jesus, you're the only one that I could live for. One way, Jesus, you're the only one that I could live for. One way, Jesus, you're the only one that I could live for. One way, Jesus, you're the only one that I could live for. Are you having fun? Well, what we're gonna do now is we're all gonna get down nice and low. That's it, how low can you go? And we're gonna sing, you are the way, the truth and the life. Come on, let me hear ya. You are the way, the truth and the life. We live by faith and not by sight. For you, we're living all for you. Up a bit higher. You are the way, the truth and the life. We live by faith and not by sight. For you, we're living all for you. You are the way. You are the way, the truth and the life. We live by faith and not by sight. For you, we're living all for you. You are the way, the truth and the life. We live by faith and not by sight. For you, we're living all for you. One way, Jesus, you're the only one that I could live for. One way, Jesus, you're the only one that I could live for. One way, Jesus, you're the only one that I could live for. One way, Jesus, you're the only one that I could live for. Yeah! Come on!
Amen. He's got the whole world in his hands. He's the Alpha Omega, wonderful Savior. Amen. My Jesus. Oh, come, let us sing and give praise to our King. Sing for joy and give thanks to our God. 'Cause he came to set me free, and he gave new life to me. So I'll sing for joy and give thanks to my God. Now I'm singing, amen. He's got the whole world in his hands. He's the Alpha Omega, wonderful Savior. Amen. My Jesus. Amen. He's got the whole world in his hands. He's the Alpha Omega, wonderful Savior. Amen. My Jesus. Oh, come, let us sing and give praise to our King. Sing for joy and give thanks to our God. 'Cause he came to set me free, and he gave new life to me. So I'll sing for joy and give thanks to my God. Now I'm singing, amen. He's got the whole world in his hands. He's the Alpha Omega, wonderful Savior. Amen. My Jesus. Amen. He's got the whole world in his hands. He's the Alpha Omega, wonderful Savior. Amen. My Jesus. Amen. Amen.
Right, so today we're going to talk a little bit about suffering and joy in suffering. Now, those two words might not seem like they actually belong together, suffering and joy, but the theme for the adults this week is joy and suffering, and we're going to kind of unpack that and see how we can get joy from suffering. So I've got a shirt here. I'm sure you've all got clothing in your cupboards, and if you look very closely, maybe I need to bring a little bit closer to the camera, you'll see that the shirt is rather wrinkled. You might have to look closely because it's not all that. Yeah, you can see it's pretty wrinkled. And the thing about wrinkled clothes, so I'm just going to move Darth Vader because I think he's suffered enough. I'll put him down here. So the thing with ironing is, I don't think you guys have ever ironed, and ironing is not really a fun exercise. First of all, you're working on a very unstable surface. Ironing boards are not the most stably designed boards to iron on. Then you're also working with a piece of equipment that if you touch it, it's going to burn you. It's scaldingly hot. You're also going to add water, which if you want to add a bit of steam, it can steam the clothes, which even brings out more heat and gets out those really tough crinkles. And second of all, if you drop this thing, firstly, it might make a dent if you've got a wooden floor. You could damage your toe, damage your foot. So ironing is pretty much suffering. But if you think it's suffering for the person that's doing the ironing, think of the poor shirt. It's being scalded with an extremely hot piece of metal. You've got to keep the iron moving, otherwise you're going to burn the shirt. And if you burn the shirt, well, pretty much the shirt is no longer a shirt. It's now something that's going to end up at the dump there on the way to Kommetjie. So, fortunately for me, I spent 2 years in the army, which was another bit of suffering, but the joy that I got out of that is that I actually know how to iron. So basically with ironing, you pull the shirt over the ironing board, you take your iron, if you've got one that can take water, add a bit of water in there. There we go, you can already hear the steam there. Fill it up nicely, and there we go. And then basically with ironing, all you're doing is you're just ironing the shirt. You're ironing all those wrinkles out. So I'm not going to iron the whole shirt because we might be here for a good half an hour, because even though I'm an expert ironer, because I've trained for 2 years in the army how to iron shirts, it can be a bit tedious, and I don't think you want to spend the next 20 minutes watching me iron a shirt. If you do, well, maybe we can have a continuation of the ironing session next week. So anyway, that's ironing. Here we go. Look at that. Ironing a shirt. So you can hear the steam. It's extremely hot. Don't touch the front of the iron because that would give you extreme pain. But at the end of the day, when you've finished, you've got a beautifully ironed shirt, and you can have the joy in knowing that when you get out there with your friends, or if you're going to a smart function, you know that you're looking amazing, and you guys are amazing. So there was a little verse that I wanted to share with you as well, because before we go into the sort of Bible story, which we're going to link to the thing, I'm going to read you this little Bible verse, which I've actually printed out. So if you look at the verse, it says, it's from James chapter 1, verses 2 to 4. Dear brothers and sisters, when troubles of any kind come your way, consider it an opportunity for great joy. For you know that when your faith is tested, your endurance has a chance to grow. So let it grow, for when your endurance is fully developed, you will be perfect and complete, needing nothing. So we may not understand why there's so much suffering in the world. We may not know why God's allowed this pandemic to spread through the world, but it's not the first time there's been a pandemic. And if what we're reading in this verse is explaining to us is that through suffering we get a chance to grow. Same way with this shirt, it goes through a lot of pain to iron out those wrinkles. But once all those wrinkles are ironed out, it's the perfect shirt to wear, whether you're going to a smart function, whether you're just going out with friends and you want to actually look smart, because you don't want to go looking scruffing when you're playing with your friends. So that's the whole point of it, going through that process. So the Bible story I'm going to look at today is the story of Joseph. Now, Joseph was the second youngest of his father's sons, and he was the most loved son. And yet, he didn't have an easy time of it with his brothers. Now, I don't know, you've all probably got brothers and sisters, or some of you, and they can be a pain at times. And sometimes, as a younger sibling, you suffer. I know my younger brother was actually dressed up as a girl when he was young, because my sister, who was the oldest, always wanted a sister, and she ended up having 3 brothers. So Chris, when he was young, was basically dressed up as a girl for sort of the first couple of years, which was probably quite a suffering thing for him. But at the end of the day, he's now married and happy, and he's living a very joyful life. So the point of Joseph is that Joseph suffered at the hands of his brothers. He was sold as a slave, as if that wasn't bad enough. And this was after he'd been thrown into a pit. He was sold as a slave. He went off to Egypt, and there he ended up working for Potiphar. And then Potiphar's wife accused him of being inappropriate, and then he ended up in jail. But while he was in jail, he was actually promoted to the head prisoner, so he could sort of take care of the other prisoners. And that led him to the butler and the baker, and then he interpreted their dreams. And all the while that he'd been suffering, God had been using the suffering to get him to a point where he actually could rescue not only Egypt, but people in Israel and other areas close by that would have suffered tremendously during that famine. Because remember, they had a famine for 7 years. 7 years they had plentiful, and then 7 years they had no food. And yet, thanks to Joseph, who had suffered all these terrible things, he came out on the other side because he trusted in God. And that I think is the key for us as well, boys and girls, is we need to trust in God. Whatever is happening, we've got to put our faith in God, because Joseph put his faith in God. He never wavered. And at the end of the day, when his brothers and his dad came over to Egypt, actually his dad didn't come the first time, when his brothers came, they were quite surprised and quite shocked to see that the brother that they had belittled and made fun of and thrown in a pit and sold as a slave was now sort of the second most important person in Egypt. And it was basically their younger brother that they had made suffer that was now bringing them the food that was going to basically save their lives and save the whole of Egypt and the whole of Israel, and I'm sure many others of those countries in the same area that were suffering from the famine. So, and they had great joy when they realized that this brother, which they had rejected, was actually alive and could actually supply them with the food they needed. So in that sense, that joy that came when, and then they went back to Israel to fetch their father, because Joseph wanted to see his dad. And you can just imagine that family reunion, because he thought that his son had been killed by wild animals, because that's what the brother said. And imagine the suffering that father had gone through also for all those years of thinking his son was dead, is now alive. And that's just, to me, that's like the Bible story with the ultimate amount of suffering that one person went through. And yet at the end of the day, the joy when they were united as a family, and basically nations were saved because of one man trusting God.
God's story, Joseph. So part of God's story is about a guy named Joseph, and it begins like this. Once there was a guy named Joseph who had 10 older brothers and one younger one. When Joe was a boy, he was his dad's favorite. In fact, his dad liked him so much better than his brothers that he gave Joe a special gift to prove it. You can imagine this made his brothers jealous. And Joe only made things worse. He told his brothers about dreams he had where he was ruling over them. Well, this made Joe's brothers furious. One day they were working and saw Joe coming. They said, "Here comes that dreamer." They threw Joe into a dark pit. They might have left him there forever, but they met some men traveling from Egypt and sold Joe to them as a servant instead. They thought that was slightly nicer than leaving him in a pit. Then they went home and told their father Joe had been killed by a wild animal. This broke their dad's heart. Kids, these brothers were really bad news. Selling a sibling is never a good idea. Ever. But the Bible says the Lord was with Joe. When Joe was a servant, he worked for a really important rich guy named Potiphar. And Potiphar liked Joe so much, he put him in charge of the whole house. Joe was happy until one day he was blamed for something he didn't do, and Potiphar sent him straight to jail. Well, God was still with Joe, even in prison. The guard decided he liked Joe so much, he put him in charge of all the other prisoners. Then God gave Joe special knowledge about dreams. When two prisoners had dreams, Joe knew what they meant, so he told them. 2 years later, Egypt's ruler called Pharaoh had a dream, and nobody knew what it meant. But by now, one of the two prisoners Joe had helped was out of jail and working for Pharaoh. He told Pharaoh about Joe, and God helped Joe figure out what Pharaoh's dream meant. But Pharaoh's dream was really more of a nightmare. It meant that everybody in Egypt would have food for 7 years, then be hungry for 7 years. Joe told Pharaoh the only way to survive was to store food during the 7 good years. Well, Pharaoh thought Joe's idea was brilliant. He put him in charge. During the 7 hungry years, nobody could eat without getting food from Joe. He was like a human vending machine. Well, remember how Joe had 11 brothers? Like everybody else, they had to get food from Joe. And when they came, they didn't even recognize their brother. But Joe knew who they were. He secretly tested them to see if they changed. After all, they did throw him in a pit and sell him. Finally, he couldn't hide who he was from his brothers anymore. He told everyone to leave the room because he was about to cry. After sobbing for a few minutes, he told them, "I'm your brother Joseph. I'm the one you sold." The brothers couldn't believe it. They had hurt Joe, but God had taken care of him during the good times and the bad. Even with everything they had done to Joe, he forgave them because he was willing to follow God, even when it was hard. Joe told them, "You planned to harm me, but God planned it for good." And God used Joe to save many lives, including the family that was part of God's special rescue plan. And that's the story of Joseph. So in case you missed it, here's the quick version. Joe was his dad's favorite. His brothers sold him. Potiphar put Joe in charge. Joe was sent to jail. The guard put Joe in charge. Pharaoh had a bad dream. Joe told him what it meant. Pharaoh put Joe in charge. Joe's brothers had to come to him for food. Joe forgave them. This was part of God's rescue plan. And that's a part of God's story.
So let's keep the faith. We will see you hopefully soon. Thanks to those of you that came with us last Sunday or 2 Sundays ago. We will probably actually be going for a walk on the beach again this Sunday morning, which is the Sunday that I'm doing this lesson. But we'll keep you posted. We're going to try, I think, go and do sort of walks on the beach and build bridges across or dam up the river as often as we can. So have a great week, and we'll see you soon.
When I am down and oh my soul so weary, when troubles come and my heart burden be, then I am still and wait here in the silence until you come and sit a while with me. You raise me up so I can stand on mountains. You raise me up to walk on stormy seas. I am strong when I am on your shoulders. You raise me up to more than I can be. raise me up to more than I can be. You raise me up so I can stand on mountains. You raise me up to walk on stormy seas. I am strong when I am on your shoulders. You raise me up to more than I can be. You raise me up so I can stand on mountains. You raise me up to walk on stormy seas. I am strong when I am on your shoulders. You raise me up to more than I can be. You raise me up to more than I can be. Bind me not to the pasture, chain me not to the plow. Set me free to